Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're able to join us for this new edition of our 49er Industry Chats. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Cal State Long Beach. Before we start our session and introduce our guest speaker, I want to let you know that this session is being recorded and it will live on our home website. And also, at any time during the chat today, if you have any questions for our speaker, please use the Q&A box below, as that helps us moderate the questions coming in. And now I would like to introduce Lucia Cos, who graduated in 1975 from the College of Liberal Arts with a degree in Spanish and was recognized as a distinguished alumni in 2005 and now serves on the CSUB Alumni Council. Thank you, Lucia, for moderating.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome, all of you. Uduak Joe Tuck is the California State Oil and Gas Supervisor, where he is responsible for the management of the California Geological Energy Management Division, or CAL-IGEM, formerly known as the Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources. So this division prioritizes protecting the public and the environment in its oversight of the oil and natural gas and geothermal industries in our state. CAL-IGEM uses science and sound engineering practices to regulate the drilling, operation, and permanent closure of energy resource wells. Uduak formerly served as the Director of Petroleum Administration for the City of Los Angeles. He was responsible for oversight and public policy of oil fields, gas storage facilities, petroleum refineries, and pipeline franchise agreements. A technical professional with both public and private sector energy experience, Uduak provided technical advice to the mayor, city council, and various city departments. He also represented the city on the South Coast Air Quality Management District's multiple Air Force Air Toxic Exposure Study, Technical Advisory Group, and on the Baldwin Hills Community Standards District's Advisory Panel for the Inglewood oil field. He earned his Master of Sciences in Petroleum Engineering from the University of Southern California. He got a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from California State University, Long Beach, and an associate degree in liberal arts from Long Beach City College. Uduak Joe also teaches in the Chemical Engineering Department at California State University, Long Beach, and serves as a publicly elected member of the Long Beach Community College District Board of Trustees. Thank you, Uduak, for joining us today to lead in today's industry chat. Uduak.
Hey, good morning, Lucia. Thank you so much for the introduction, and welcome everybody for spending hopefully your lunch hour talking about public sector, energy and environmental jobs. And hopefully I can share a little bit about my background and take some questions, and hopefully my story can inform student stories and other people who are looking at different careers in the energy and environmental field. So, you know, you heard my formal resume and background there that, you know, I'm currently today the 17th State Oil and Gas Supervisor in California history, oversee organization of about 300 people in 5 different offices across the state, and all the traditional oil fields of regulatory authority, underground gas storage facilities, and then the geothermal operations, which we in California are the largest producer of geothermal energy in the world. And I'm a member of Governor Newsom's administration in this capacity. You know, I'll start off of, you know, I was a teen parent at a community college some 20 plus years ago. You know, looking for what am I going to do with my career. I thought I was going to go to the NFL for a short period of my life. I played college football for 3 years and chasing the dream. Ended up in West Texas in Amarillo, south of Amarillo, playing Division II football out there. Played 2 years at Long Beach City College and got a full ride scholarship out to West Texas A&M. But it's, you know, I had reached my goal, but my goal was too small. And so, but also got to figure out, what do I do now as a young dad? And I had I think I had a 1-year-old at the time. And so came back to California from Texas and transferred to Long Beach State. I knew about Long Beach State because of Career Day. I think I was a sophomore year in high school. Dr. Fillerup came, who was a professor, and talked about chemical engineering as a universal engineering, and you can work in medicine and rockets and fuel. And I knew the program was there. He actually ended up being my professor when I ultimately transferred to Long Beach State, but made the decision to come, finish my degree back at my kind of home university. And, my personal kind of background story, you go, Ooltewah, Joe, where is that from? My mom is I'm 3rd generation Long Beach resident on my mom's side. My grandpa was a flight deck captain in the U.S. Navy and ended up in the Long Beach Naval Base. And my mom got inspired by JFK after college and went into the Peace Corps. And lo and behold, was teaching math and science in West Africa and Nigeria, where they only had 5-inch by 5-inch chalkboards, no books, no paper. How do you teach algebra and biology? Fortunately, there was this nice other professor at the school, or teacher, that taught her how, and they fell in love and got married and had 5 kids. And that's, she one named me Joe and he one named me Ooltewah. They put a hyphen in the middle, Ooltewah Joe. So it came on the receipt, on the birth certificate. I didn't have a choice. So, and he actually, my dad, when he came from Nigeria as a foreign student, went to Long Beach State in 1967 and graduated in 1970. And so, I'm a 2nd generation 49er, on my dad's side. So, it's, I was looking, done playing football, trying to figure it out, come to Long Beach State, get involved. I'd always, I was an Eagle Scout and always in student government. And so became the, engineering senator in ASI and, led a couple of the, AESB, or the Associated Engineering Student Body, vice president for a little while. And, led our student professional organizations for Tau Beta Pi, the Honor Society, and American Institute of Chemical Engineers and National Society of Black Engineer, chapter president while I was there. But I also did internships. I had an opportunity to work in downtown Long Beach on environmental engineering projects and polluted groundwater from, bomb manufacturing facilities from the 1940s and 50s and the Cold War stuff. And ended up spending 2 summers out in Indiana doing plastic manufacturing at General Electric, and learned all about the Midwest, and got to drive cross country 4 times in my beat up old VW Jetta, as a Long Beach State student, and got to go see Mount Rushmore and go see America on the way to go getting some work experience. And then I had the opportunity to work for Chevron in Bakersfield as my final internship as undergrad, and got a full-time offer at the end of that summer experience, and had already been an intern, so knew how to present and, business professional conduct and so forth, and worked in Kern County for about 6 years, and so it's, I had a really, I think, great experience. I was on the debate team or forensics team there at Long Beach State Student Government. I did study abroad in China. I did a minor in business, and I was there before the Olympics happened, and some of that development. And just, Long Beach State was a great opportunity for me to build out my full self. I got a minor in business, minor in chemistry, and a certificate in global logistics while I was there, in addition to my chemical engineering bachelor's degree. So, went off into the workplace, and while I was working for Chevron, worked in multiple technical capacities, staff engineering, reservoir engineering, production engineering, and then I was doing my master's at USC at the same time, just to, chemical engineering is a whole, subset of how refineries basically works. And then petroleum engineering is how oil fields, generally work. And so, the Chemical Engineering Foundation was a great preparation for the technical nature of, the upstream production area. But then the master's program I was doing was the same work I was doing every day, was the same thing was in my graduate work. So it was really good synergy there. And then, my daughter, or my oldest daughter now, then was going to middle school. And so I moved back to Long Beach. I got a job with the city of Long Beach, overseeing the oil islands in the harbor there. So I was able to coach her soccer team and do PTA and all that fun stuff. When I came back to the city of Long Beach, because, you know, you work at a state job, 5 o'clock, you got to go home, no overtime. You know, you work in the private sector, you're working 70, 80 hours a week, Saturdays and Sundays. So, you know, work-life balance decision. And, but also opportunity to serve, you know, the city I grew up in, my hometown of Long Beach. And so I worked for the city of Long Beach for about 5.5 years, doing a variety of planning, environmental work, city council report backs, you know, all kind of different activities, you know, and was able to use my education and professional experience to really serve the residents of Long Beach. And then Aliso Canyon happened, the largest natural gas blowout in U.S. history here in North LA County. And city of LA realized they do not have anybody on staff that had any understanding of how oil in the old oil field, the natural gas facility, oil, I mean, it's basically an oil well that blew out, that even though it's natural gas is what's held in the facility. And I was getting calls from friends of mine in LA, and can you consult? Can you help us? And I go, no, under municipal code, I can't do anything because I can't do the same work I'm doing for the city of Long Beach for the city of LA unless I work for the city of LA. Okay, we're gonna see if we can find a job for you. So I got recruited to go work for Mayor Garcetti in downtown LA, and had 3 years in the Boilermaker that's LA City Politics and City Hall. And you know, I was the solution. You know, I didn't really have much staff. I didn't have even a budget, but had to come up with how do you deal with public health and oil and gas? How do you, what ordinances do we do? Had zoning code, working with the city attorney's office. I got an audit done with the city controller's office of, you know, all the oil wells. We hadn't had a modern inventory in probably 30 years in city of LA. Where are oil wells and where are the pipelines? And there's actually 18 active fields under the city of LA right now. And at one point, LA was the Saudi Arabia of oil. We were the largest producer of oil in the 1920s, and the largest producer of oil in the world was LA. You know, it's kind of crazy to think of that today, but a lot of that legacy infrastructure is still there, buried under freeways and buildings and even some people's homes. And so really a hodgepodge of activities dealing with refineries and refining air quality issues, pipelines, pipeline contracts and agreements, and then oil field inspections and the technical nature of that. And, you know, everything I had done in my career prepared me for that, you know, education, work experience, other government experience. You know, and along the way there, I was a personnel commissioner at Long Beach City College, overseeing the merit system for the classified employees there at the college. There's about, I think Long Beach City College has about 2,500 employees, maybe about 1,200 are classified. Those are people who might be janitors or IT technicians, and the non-faculty folks. And then I was teaching part-time at Long Beach State in the chemical engineering department, my old department, you know, talk about life coming full circle. And I actually was the first Black professor they've ever had in the chemical engineering department at Long Beach State there in 2015. So, you know, maybe make a little bit of history, you know, but also an opportunity to give back, engage with students. You know, I have my oldest daughter is now 21. I have a 14-year-old, you know, it's like, I generally know what TikTok is and, you know, Snapchat and IG and everything. So it's a good way to stay in the loop of what's cool and what's not, you know, being Professor Uduak there part-time. So that was a great experience, another opportunity to give back to the college. And I ended up getting elected to the college board for Long Beach City College from my neighborhood in North Long Beach in 2018 while I was still with the city of LA. And, you know, outside there's a clear line of delineation that, you know, you got to get legal reviews of, I don't have voting jurisdiction in the city of LA. The city of LA has no contracts with you know, the college district. And so there's no conflict of interest there. I could do both, you know? And so, you know, and I think the college board will meet one night a month. So it's a really super part-time job in some respects, but then also it can be a full-time job in other respects. So, you know, people call and complain, or I didn't get my grade, or they denied me my scholarship, or, you know, help me, you know, so, you know, if somebody calls about my grandkid didn't, you know, get in the honors program. Okay, let me see what I can do. Call the vice president over here, talk to the superintendent, you know, just kind of referrals and help people problem solve through the process. So actually, when I got elected to the college board, I'm the first African-American male ever elected to the college board in Long Beach City College history. since I think 1927. So been on the board there for 2 years now. Got a call last summer. Hey, we saw this health study you did in the city of LA. The governor's office is very interested in it. Would you consider applying for this job? Maybe. What is it? Oh, state oil and gas supervisor. Okay. And it's just funny, or the irony of life. My first job in Bakersfield in this, about 6 years I spent out there, I would fill out paper versions of these applications to get a permit to do well work. And now it's digital, and every permit has a state oil and gas supervisor's name on it. So now my name's on every permit in the state, and I got the job and had to do a bunch of interviews and background checks and so forth. But pre-coronavirus, we knew a pandemic had happened. We didn't know it was going to happen right now. And so, I started last November, and I was commuting from, Long Beach to Sacramento, fly up Monday morning, fly back Wednesday, Thursday night, commuting, and then the pandemic hit. So I've been here for, I guess, 4 months now, working and living out of Long Beach. So, it's, which is nice, to be home and not have to travel, but I'm still busy all day, every day with the whole statewide range of issues that are happening on hydraulic fracturing, on legislative policy, on HR issues, litigation, which is, I'm really enjoying it because it's, I was in the debate team. I was, in student government. I know about, judicial branch, executive branch, and the legislative branch, and I'm in the executive branch. And so, it's really putting all that I've been able to learn over my career in education into practice in real life. So hopefully that gives a little context to the formal bio. And I can see we have some chats, I think, that are coming in, questions. And please, if you have questions, share. What position did you play in college? So I'm a former all-CIF, all-city linebacker and free safety. I used to be, they used to tell me I was like Ronnie Lott. I used to like breaking people's arms and legs. It was my forte. So I'm a recovered linebacker who's now a petroleum engineer.
That's great. Uduak, you've been zigzagging, and right now, would you say that your position is more on the regulatory side and kind of fighting the good fight for the environment?
Yeah, so I'm a regulator. I work on behalf of the state of California, the people of California. My job is to protect the public interest, minimize liability and harm to everyday Californians. We're doing a oil and gas public health rulemaking right now, which is a first-time effort to address some longstanding concerns about communities adjacent to hydrocarbon production and manufacturing, and whether it's refineries or oil fields. We are doing that evaluation. We're doing a number of technical work about safety in the oil field and what's called surface expressions about oil coming out of the ground. Unintended, it's not supposed to do that. It's called high energy surface expressions that we're working with national labs, Livermore National Labs, in a comprehensive statewide study. And so even interesting, a lot, my graduate work was in digital, basically smart oil field technology is what it's called, but it's the conceptual area is called digital oil field of the future. So it basically was like, how do you digitize and remotely control oil fields is what we, I took classes in fuzzy logic, data management, augmented reality, just at the time, I'll never use this. I am working on virtual inspections, drone inspections, augmented digital versions of oil fields that we can do remote witnessing and remote, basically augmented, or it's almost like a virtual reality inspection, because all of our staff is in their homes. They can't go out, but we got to still regulate. So it's this modern virtual regulation, but it's, I go to court, I take companies to court. I have broad statutory powers within the state. I work with environmental justice groups on We're trying to do an environmental justice policy for my department right now. We're working on racial justice. We have adopted and are implementing the Long Beach Framework for Reconciliation, where we are under a problem in American systemic racism. We're listening to staff. We brought on professionals to facilitate meetings. We have a formal convening process, and we're making a racial action plan for our department. Unrelated to regular engineering, but the work of the people of California to make sure that we have a respectful workplace, but a place where people can work with dignity and be productive and not have any issues as they're doing the people's business.
So Uduak, it sounds like you've kind of segued into the impact of COVID to not just the industry that you're looking over, but also in the way that you monitor it and thinking ahead. Is there anything else, like, for example, somebody's asked, what are the opportunities for a geologist with or without a license in that public sector?
Yeah, one of the things in the public sector is different from the private sector. And I can tell you, it's about, in the public sector, minimum qualifications. Do you meet the minimum qualification for a job? Do you at least have a degree and 2 years experience? Every job will say at the bottom what the job posting, what the minimum qualifications are. Sometimes it's a license, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's experience or a special type of experience. It all depends. In the public sector, there's hydrologists, there's geologists, there's geophysicists. So depending on what area of geology you're in, you generally, for a geology area, you need to have a bachelor's and a master's and a professional geology license. I used to be an academic advisor at Long Beach State, so I used to help all the engineering students figure out what careers in grad school they're going to go to for electrical, mechanical, and chemical engineering. And geology is similar in that sense that there's multiple pathways. You can go work directly in the private sector for like a geophysical consulting company that helps with development of high rises and looks at the seismic activity of a big building. Or you can work in the oil and gas sector for an oil company and look at rock formations and logs. You could work for the State Water Board and look at geology from water protection perspective. So there's lots of different ones. And once you get into the state or into a public entity, there's lots of lateral opportunities. So, whether it's geology or it's engineering, say you work in the city of LA, they have engineers in public works and transportation and metro and the port. So there's lots of areas and opportunities for people to transfer within, depending on what your academic area and credentials. And so, like, if you work for the city of LA, you want to be an engineer, you have to pass the fundamental engineering exam. And coming on as a new hire in the city of LA, if you don't pass in the first year, you get fired. Like, it's that serious. So, so it's like, get your credential. If you're in school now, finish your, in my class, I used to teach thermodynamics. I would teach to the engineering licensing exam. Like, okay, why are we doing this? You may think this doesn't matter, but this is everything you need to know for the thermal section of the FE exam. And we would, go through it throughout the semester. So at least one portion of the exam you were ready to do. And most of my students passed it. And it was a credential they had that they have what's called the Engineering and Training, EIT. And so you have your bachelor's degree in EIT. Now you're eligible for all these public sector jobs, whether water districts or cities or counties or state or federal, you're eligible for all those type of jobs.
Well, you just opened yourself up to a lot of callbacks from some of the listeners on that maybe, find themselves looking for work in not just in engineering. My husband was a geologist, so he worked in a lot of cleanup for nuclear. But I mean, it's wide open because anytime you have any kind of processes out there, they're not squeaky clean, and they don't. And then when they're left alone, behind, there's a lot of cleanup and mitigation that has to go on.
Yeah, I mean, talking about nuclear, the whole debate in Nevada about Yucca Mountain, should that be the National Nuclear Waste Storage Repository? And is that the right rock structure to hold it for 1 million years? I don't know, but some geologists got to figure that out, and that's a federal question. So somebody, U.S. Army Corps of engineers with a geology, degree and license is probably working on that problem. There's a lot of unique areas that folks can work in.
Yeah. You mentioned, this is another question. You mentioned that the work-life balance was better working in the government sector than the private sector. But do you weigh that against maybe is it more financially rewarding to work in the private sector?
Yeah. So, everybody has to make a decision for themselves. What's their best interest and what do they want to do? So, I mean, it's like when I worked for Chevron, they were like, oh, don't get an engineering license, get a master's degree. And then I worked for the city of Long Beach. Well, why come you don't have an engineering license? Get an engineering license. Like, well, nobody said that before. So, there's different expectations in a different area. But yeah, when you're in the private sector, it's a different work environment. I mean, I jokingly have described going from Chevron to the city of Long Beach like going from the Jetsons to the Flintstones. All the software and technology and processes that I learned in graduate school and I did at Chevron that were all high tech, government agencies don't have that. They're resource constrained. They didn't have software licenses. They didn't have software databases. They gave me a book and a piece of paper and said to do a gas analysis on the field. And I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? That's the reality of the public sector, especially at the bottom, there's not a lot of resources, but you do get your weekends. You can't get every other Friday off on a 980, depending on what's going on in your life. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not,
Right.
you want to make money and, move upward mobility. And, some companies have stock options. Some have hiring bonuses. Some have relocation bonuses. Some have performance bonuses. There's a whole host of financial incentives that are available in the private sector that is not available in the public sector. But can you even get a public sector job if you wanted one? Because like I used to be a recruiter for Chevron. If you didn't have a 3.0, I cannot physically put you in our database to even interview you. So, you got to have at least a 3.0 to even get in the game, let alone that's the bottom of the rung. So really you need to be 3.5 or higher to be competitive straight out of school for some of these private sector jobs, if they want to. But, there's some companies, they don't even check your GPA. Yeah, you can work, fine, come on. And there's, there's small companies that are private sector, and you have certain elements of risk. A small company might go out of business, but you got a job until they go out of business, and some of the bigger companies, you work to them until they get bought out by somebody else and change their name. And then you may get laid off because they merge because they want to save money. So, there's always a threat, and the same thing is there's a recession and you're in the public sector, you may get laid off, or you may get furloughed because you don't have the most seniority. People with seniority in the public sector, senior people are usually last to go, and so there's always the risks that you have to balance of the economy and where you are and what you're doing. But one of the things about a STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math, higher rates of pay, lower rates of unemployment. It's a better, it's job stability because you can take your skills are transferable to multiple industries and companies and agencies, which is, not to say you can't do that with an English degree, but it's a little tougher, Yeah,
that's a good transition. Someone just said, thanks for conducting this webinar event, but is there a plan for a just transition from oil gas workers as they transition to more clean energy sources?
Yeah, I think that's somebody who knows what I do in my job every day. The California has made a commitment starting with AB 32 under the Schwarzenegger administration to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to a sustainable level to minimize the global warming. So whether it's 1.5 or 2 average degree increase, California has made a legislative and policy decision that we are going to reduce our emissions. So part of that too is about carbon neutrality, which is you think of what neutral or net, for all you put out, you have to cut down as much as you put out, like to be neutral on a net balance. So we are shifting, whether it's electric vehicles or it's, we don't have coal-fired power plants anymore. They've converted to natural gas mainly. And that is a cleaner fuel, but it still has emissions when you have natural gas power plants. Geothermal still has emissions, even though it's not technically under the cap and trade system, but it provides cleaner baseline electricity energy. So it's from all the various sources of emissions, which the majority are for transportation, cars, trucks, super tankers, airplanes. How do we reduce those emissions? There's actually some studies happening in the state right now on how does supply and demand impact carbon neutrality to meet our 2040 and 2030, 2045, and 2050 goals as a state. So we are still trying to figure it out. And in my organization, we used to have a different name. We used to be called DOGGR, their Division of Oil, Gas, Geothermal Resources. But last year, when the governor appointed me, he also signed a bill, changed the name to CalGEM, California Geological Energy Management. And CalGEM has a new mission, which we didn't have before, explicitly to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions from our regulated entities and to advance the state's clean energy goals. So like we have a procurement policy. We cannot buy any internal combustion cars anymore. In my fleet of vehicles for my inspectors, what we have, these are the last gas-powered cars we're going to have. We already have electric vehicles, but we are going to phase out our fleet to go zero emission. We can only buy zero emission vehicles going forward. Even before the pandemic, at the beginning of this year, there was new state policy. Like we don't get a choice. I can't go buy a Suburban, for an inspector. I can only go buy, some pre-approved zero emission vehicle, so we are working through it, but it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for all.
So along the lines, I want to keep on with that one because I'm thinking, as goes to the question, should some of these folks be considering maybe going back to school to learn more about where's the best place to learn about the new technologies that they're going to need to know?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One of the things I always tell people in my class and even as an academic advisor, realize what you're learning in school is the foundation. And many times it's 30 to 40 years behind what's happening in industry and reality. And so you're just getting a baseline information, but you're going to need to be a continuous lifelong learner. And today a bachelor's degree is nice, but insufficient. You need to go to graduate school. Graduate school is shorter than a bachelor's program. You usually can get it done in 1 or 2 years, surprisingly, for a much cheaper cost than your 4-year degree. But you can specialize in an area of interest. So if you're a geologist and you want to specialize in hydrogeology, you can do a master's program for that. If you were a chemical engineer and you want to focus on environmental engineering, you can do a master's in environmental engineering. And you'll have access to a whole host of new information, reading, writing, academic journals, and that will advance your knowledge of understanding your profession. And so graduate school, I highly recommend it. Outside of that, if you're not able to go to graduate school, there's certificate programs out there from many universities. There's a lot of online content that's even free now that you can get a certificate from. You got to figure it out. And you should have an annual professional development plan that you are building on your area of expertise, building out what do you know? What do you do good at? What does everybody else in your profession know how to do that you don't know how to do? That you can keep building your tool belt of skills through continual learning, because there's not one answer. There's not a red pill to go take and you'll know everything about climate change. It doesn't work that way.
Let me move you in another direction now. That same person asked another question about how do you incorporate the Long Beach framework for reconciliation into your efforts and ensure that the benefit from the oil tax, from the I guess that POC benefit from the oil tax increase?
Well, it sounds like it's conflating a couple of different issues there.
I know, because I didn't know what the POC is. I
think that's people of color.
Okay.
One, we already have a very diverse staff in the state. Our goal is to look like the people of California that we serve. We have a merit-based system of civil service that people have to meet the minimum qualifications, submit their application on time, have the appropriate credentials to even get in it. But once you're in state service, how do we make sure you have a respectful environment to be productive? So I could just share some things that we're doing, of the Long Beach Framework for Reconciliation, which has been adopted by the City of Long Beach City Council. I also introduced and adopted at the Long Beach City College, College Board, and we are working through it. And it's different for everybody because it's different people, it's different staffs, it's different issues. I just give you an example at the college. You were working with the USC Center on Race and Equity. And so they are helping us have best practices and reducing systemic racism. So that's maybe making sure you have a woman on every interview panel, that we produce our materials in multilingual languages so people can understand how to properly apply, that we have mandatory implicit bias training so that people can't say they didn't know that what they were saying was perceived as racist, right? Those are things that we're doing. We're also reading a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist together by Ibrahim Kendi. That is an effort we are doing as a management team at the college. That's what we found that works for us. And at the state level, we are going through, we have brought on also professionals to facilitate listening discussions for people to say either share their experience or what they're not of their experience. It's open. There's not blaming, shaming, judging anyone, but it's about reconciliation. This comes out of an African tradition, South Africa, post-apartheid. Nelson Mandela went from a jail cell to the presidency, in a matter of, I think, a year and a half. But that didn't solve everything. He still had, horrific injustices that occurred. But how do you unify a country and a community? How do you have a functional democracy when you've had, tremendous grievances that, slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, war on drugs, redlining, you can't even get a loan to buy a house. I represent a community that was greenlined. 50 years ago, it was illegal for me to buy a house in the district I represent now on the College Board. And so while we have come a long way, we have not reached the mountaintop in any sense of the matter. And we have made progress, but everything we've done is not enough. And that's been difficult for some people to wrap their minds around. But this is the reality, and it's like the college we serve at Long Beach City College, we have more Black students in Long Beach City College than Long Beach State today. So you talk about African Americans in higher education in Long Beach, it's the college. It's a city college. And you want to make sure people can transfer and graduate and have decent GPAs and have access to the opportunity that we know education can provide. But if you're disrespected and looked down and stereotyped and harassed by the police just because you walk down the street, how are you supposed to learn? And it has to be a safe environment for our faculty and instructors to teach, and we need to empower them with the tools and cultural competency to know the diversity of students, that they may look the same skin tone, but have erratic, you might have somebody who looks Black, they're Haitian, and it's like, and they speak Spanish, and you just can't look at them and say, oh my God, they're Black, they must be this way. No, there's such a mosaic of what makes up the Black community. I mean, just like the Latino community or the Asian Pacific Islander community, there is no homogenous, the construct of race is a social construct. It is not real. There is no biological basis for white supremacy or superiority. And so, but that's the mythology of America. It was enshrined in our Constitution that Black people were not a full person. They were only 3/5 of a person, and so our cultural mythology has real consequences in people's health, education, life expectancy. In Long Beach, from one side of Long Beach to the other, there's like a 10, almost 12-year life expectancy gap that if you live in my zip code, you're going to not live 10 years as long as somebody in Belmont Shore. It's real. This is a real manifestation of the systemic injustice. And if we pretend like it's not there, it's not real, then we're doing a disservice to the people we serve. And we're not making, whether that's the college or state employees or the general city of Long Beach, that's what that is about. It's not a net zero game. It's not taking people's houses or jobs away. It's about really having equality where everyone has an equal opportunity. There's a study done that just LA County, we're losing out on $1 trillion in economic activity because we don't have equal funding or access to capital for women and minority-owned businesses. $1 trillion. That's more sales tax revenue. That's more money for firefighters and police officers. That's more people who can buy homes. You know, that's economic security for millions of people. But because we have the discriminatory practices in place, we don't realize those economic gains, and it hurts everybody, no matter what your skin tone is.
That's a good case right there. There's a couple of other questions. This is kind of going back. I want to make sure we just covered it. It's any danger of the Porter Ranch gas leak happening? Because it's so aged.
You know, I wasn't prepared to talk about that. You know, this is a question that has to do with my day job, and I'm happy to take that question offline with you.
Okay. All right. So they can call you back.
Sure.
So it does sound like the university, at the educational institutions, that a lot of the questions that people going into engineering might want to look for some of those new technologies, because that's where a lot of the research is being done.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things is, you know, I was on the advisory board at USC's Viterbi College for almost a decade about what are the modern skill sets that technical professionals need today. And part of that is communication skills, multilingual, multi-platform, that if you can speak multiple languages, write, read, code, become digitally fluent, and, you know, Python and multiple coding languages, that you can make apps, that you can make queries to access large data sets. That's a transferable skill set. It doesn't matter where what your academic background, but it will help you in your job of how to use a project management understanding. Like there's a PMP, professional project management credential you can get. What is a Gantt chart? What is how do you manage the task lists? How do you oversee a project from start to finish and all the different phases? Right, that's a transferable skill set that's very powerful, and it gives you employment opportunities. And so those are some examples of, you know, communications, digital fluency, project management skills that you can apply anywhere, that you can get a certificate or training, or you can even take a class while you're an undergrad, or, you know, learn about, you know, you can get a minor in, you know, computer science, you know, and learn all about coding from an academic perspective. There's also other places like General Assembly out there that teach you Python and C++ coding over the weekend in a boot camp, you know, that doesn't take a whole academic, you know, commitment and costs much less, but also is not accredited, you know.
What is a day in the life of UTOAC when you go into work right now? What does that look like?
Well, we're in the pandemic, so I roll out of bed, I walk downstairs and put on the coffee. You know, I'm checking, did I have any emergency stuff happen while I was asleep, and emails or text messages. And usually I have some early morning calls with folks on the East Coast, checking in on what's happening on, you know, maybe policy out of DC and federal issues. Then I have my administrative assistant. We touch base every morning. What's my calendar? What's changed? Who's still waiting to get a meeting? Who needs a meeting? What's a priority today or not? That, you know, different people get higher priority. If the governor's office wants to meet, we're meeting at whatever time they want to meet at. And so I need to bump those things on my calendar and be responsive, you know. But if there's other things that, you know, Johnny Q. Public wants to ask me a question about a gas pipeline in Santa Barbara. Okay, let's see if we can schedule that at the end of the week, you know. So we have those conversations. I have management calls where I might give updates on the budget, initiatives in the department, or big project deadlines that are this week. And then, you know, I do engage with the legal team. I work with about 15 attorneys. And so I get legal briefings and report backs and memos to go over, and their analysis of either legislation or litigation or different issues, whether or not it follows the statutes. And it's just, I basically am in meetings from like 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And when the pandemic first started, like I would be sitting in my chair for like 6-10 hours straight, and like, oh my God, like all day meetings. I figured out I could download the app. We use Microsoft Teams, so I can I can take a meeting and walk. So I do walking meetings. So I try to get like a 3K walk in a day just to stay, healthy, mental healthy, get out, not, your hips hurt if you sit down all day, so try to do that. But I'm also here with my kids. So I got my 4-year-old here next to me, watching Thomas the Train. I got my 14-year-old doing summer school on her computer. Sometimes they want to jump into videos, or I got to, accident to clean up while I'm in the middle of a meeting. So turn off my video and mute, and I'm still listening, but I may be making lunch or cleaning up a toy spill or, whatever's going on. So, we're all juggling in the pandemic here of families and work and, trying to still, clean the house and, keep, do all your errands and still, but I do have a full day, generally all day, every day, Monday through Friday. And I try to spend the weekends catching up as much as I can, but I keep saying, oh man, if I had 2 more weeks, I'd be caught up. And I never caught up.
If you were going to pick one major project or issue in the state of California that kind of keeps you up at night right now, what would that be? There's probably more than one.
Oh yeah, there is. Really, coronavirus is number one, man. It is an amazing phenomenon that, I keep telling people we got to be honest about the situation. We have no vaccine, we have no therapy. This is likely a 36 to 60 month event. This is not going away tomorrow, and we are having real economic impacts, and real people are actually getting sick. You got to wear your mask. I have employees who have tested positive. I've had employees get exposed at work doing inspections and quarantine, and are they going to be okay or not? It's uncertain, but it impacts everybody in different ways. I had an employee, just an example. He went to a family wedding. Oh. At the end of February. He had a pre-planned 3-week vacation. He went to West Africa for a family wedding, represent his family, his deceased parents. I think it was his sister or his cousin was getting married, and, traditional wedding, you have to go, culturally you got to go. And he got locked in. Airports closed. It was Nigeria. They instituted a travel ban to and from the United States, as a precaution, because we had a higher COVID than they did, and he didn't report to work. And we're like, where is he? And I kept getting reports. He didn't show up. And he's about to get, AWOL, lose his job. And I found him on LinkedIn and sent him an email like, hey, what's going on? Hey, I'm stuck. He was in a rural, remote area because of the COVID. He couldn't travel. There was, armed militia. This is a third world country. That he didn't know that it was going to happen. They grounded all flights in the country. So he was a 7-hour drive from the nearest airport. And fortunately, I was able to work with our U.S. Senator Kamala Harris's office to put in a request, and they were able to contact the U.S. Embassy, the State Department. They were able to connect with him, got him a flight and a ticket back to D.C., but he had to figure out how does he get 7 hours across from rural Africa into the big city of Lagos there where the flight was scheduled. So he had to procure armed police, called mobile police, or MOPO is the acronym out there, to escort him through all the different barriers. The State Department sent him a letter so he could show that, like, I have authorization to pass. I have a ticket with the U.S. Embassy in Lagos, and it was just, we got him back after he was stuck there for 7 weeks. Wow. And so, just, the hardship that created. So, we're all dealing with the pandemic differently in unexpected ways. He didn't think, oh, I'm going to a family wedding, I'm going to be stuck for almost 2.5 months, in another country. And we weren't paying him because he didn't come to work. He didn't get paid. So then it's a personal financial crisis because no show for work.
So a couple of quick questions on career. So would it be helpful career-wise to take a class or two on basic law? How did you gain your law knowledge?
Yeah, I work with a lot of lawyers. I have been working with lawyers a long time. I actually almost went to law school myself. I took the LSAT. The debate team was really good experience. Everybody I went to was in the debate team. They're all lawyers now. I didn't know that was what people did. The forensics team was there at Long Beach State. So, you do have to take a political science class, undergraduate requirements. Pay attention. That is the intro to law. If you don't know, it's all about the Constitution. The law is based on the Constitution. There's a California Constitution and a United States Constitution, and those principles prevail over all other possible laws. So, one of the things too is everywhere you go, there are different versions of the law. So in like City of Long Beach, they have a charter. That's the Constitution of the city. The city charter is the prevailing legal doctrine, but there's also the municipal code, which is additive things on top of the charter that says when will streets get cleaned? How many oil wells can you have in the city? That's in the municipal code. At the state level, you have statutes. So the legislative branch, they create laws and their statutes, and they have a big, long statute record that has all of them. And then there's regulations of how do you implement the statute. And so there's statutes and regulations. At the federal level, there's a Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. Those are all the federal laws. There's federal laws that Congress does, and so you hear about the Stimulus Act. That's a federal law appropriating so much money for coronavirus recovery that everybody gets $1,200 checks. That was a law. Whether you think of it that way or not, when it showed up in your bank account, that's where it came from, from the federal government. So there are classes, law for non-lawyers you can take. There are there's legal study, the master's in legal studies you can do at different places. Pepperdine has it. Most of the time, if you're going to go to law school, it doesn't matter what undergrad you got. I always told my students, if you have a bachelor's in chemical engineering and go to law school, you're going to make a lot of money. I know folks who are lawyers who do intellectual property. They're getting $500 an hour, billable hour. They're getting paid $500 an hour. You get paid a lot of money, So, consider a career in law. That's an option no matter what your undergrad degree is in. But you don't have to be a lawyer. You can still be affiliated with law without being a lawyer.
So I guess someone's asking about some of the jobs and internship. They're saying terms, but that they should look into if they would like to work in the field of sustainability and safety.
Yeah, there's all kinds of internship opportunities. There's a HSE, Health, Safety, and Environment is one kind of health and safety kind of general parameter. If you Googled internships and HSE, Health, Safety, Environment, you'll find opportunities. There's consulting companies, there's small companies, there's government agencies that do that. There is sustainability jobs that you can Google. There's degrees. You can go to Arizona State and get a bachelor's and master's and even a PhD in sustainability at Arizona State. So there's academic programs. Columbia has one that's like that. There's areas that you can do. But if you're looking for a specific internship, it's very broad based. Like, what is your skill set? What is your knowledge? There's a training out there called HAZWOPER, Hazardous Waste Operations. That's a class and a certification you get done in one day. And you learn all about hazardous waste and toxic spills and oil spills. And, so there's little trainings you can do that'll give you a quick credential. And then you would be eligible for some of these internships. And some internships are only in the summer. Some are part-time while you're in the semester. There's another one called co-ops. And co-ops are like you would take a semester off and go work full-time as an intern somewhere for 6 months, right? So there's different versions around the country depending on your industry, your major, where you're trying to go. So it's really as creative as you can, and find a mentor. Find somebody who knows the industry you want to work in, and they can tell you where the internships are. I mean, my office, we're going to have summer internship. So if you look on, State of California, Department of Conservation, we have an internship program that, we're trying to figure out how do we do it virtually now. So you can, work anywhere and still get paid and get some professional experience.
I thought that there was that one question I thought had been answered. I think when you were talking about how you have to pass your certain not certificates, but degrees in terms of professional engineering to keep your job in public sector.
Yes,
But,
it depends.
but are you required to pass that in order to get in?
So you could have, so like the city of LA example, you're required to have your fundamentals of engineering exam passed, the EIT, to keep your job at the entry level. At that point, if you don't get your professional engineering license, you're going to hit a ceiling where you say, okay, you only these classifications, the most pay you could get in the classification without a license. If you want to move up to the next one that has higher pay and higher pay ladder, you got to pass the license. And then research shows that if the sooner you take the licensing exam after, while you're in school or as soon as you get out of school, your probability of passing is much higher. It's almost a 3-to-1. The longer you wait, the more difficult and unlikely you are going to pass. So the sooner you can take it. Now, I always tell my students, you could take, one, you just got to have, generally you need 4 years of work experience and passing the fundamental engineering exam or have an EIT credential. But if you go to grad school, you get 2 years of credit if you have a master's. Or if you have a PhD, you get 4 years of credit. So you can do it while you're in school. If you were an academic the whole time, you could do it while you're in school still. But if you're new and you only have your bachelor's, you got your EIT, you got to get at least 4 years experience before you can even take the test. But a long time doesn't mean you can't get ready. You can do a master's, you can do a prep program. There's all kind of PE preparations. If you have a good job, you can pay $1,500 for a preparation class. It's just like going to law school. You take an LSAT prep class. You don't just go show up and take the LSAT. Like the SAT, it's not an IQ test. You have to know what's on the test. It's how well do you understand the test is really the test, not about how smart you are.
Now, we kind of have to wrap up the session, but I know you have a presence on LinkedIn. What is the best way for our listeners to contact you or follow up with you?
Yeah, if folks want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm on a number of public web pages. As a public official, you have unprecedented level of transparency and access. My office phone number is on my website. If you called my office, my secretary would say, "Hey, so-and-so just called." I don't know who they are, but they just called, right? So that can, there's multiple ways to get to me. But I would say LinkedIn is the most appropriate. And if you can put a message, "Hey, I was on the webinar for Long Beach State," at least then I have some concept of who you are, where you're coming from.
I want to thank you, Uduak. I want to go ahead and turn it back to Noemi to kind of finish it off. Noemi?
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Uduak, for a great conversation today. And for everyone for joining us as well. And I invite you to visit our website to learn about future 49er industry chats on social media, and also a reminder that this video will be posted on our website within a couple of days. And our website is csob.edu/alumni. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.